Hi everyone, welcome to the third module of our VBA class. So in this class we'll learn about loops. So what are loops? So firstly, let's have a look at this question. So here we have a question where we have to find the grade of a student given his mark and his class. So if they are in class C1, then they need 65 to pass. If they're in class C2, they need 68 to pass. Okay, so we can use the if statement from before and just do that. So let's just do that first. So we're going to actually do, of course you can use a function and just drag it all down, but we're going to use a subprogram. The reason for that is we're going to get into loops. So let's call this subgrade. Okay, so what we need is we need dim marks as integer and dim class as string. So okay, so we can just say if, okay, we need to initialize first. So marks is equal to active sheet dot cells 3 3 3 3, and class is equal to active sheet dot cells 3 2. Okay, so now we can just say if marks greater than 65 and class equals to C1, then we can say active sheet, or yeah, we can say active sheet dot cells 3 4 is equal to pass. Yeah, and now we can check if marks greater than 68 and class is equal to C2, then active sheet dot cells equals to active sheet dot cells 3 4 is equal to pass. Okay, and otherwise they will fail. So active sheet dot cells 3 4 is equal to fail. So you're going to make sure that if this case is not included in this case. Okay, of course they can't be included because they can either only be C1 or C2. So that's all fine. Okay, and then just end that. Okay, so that will get us our first one. If we run it, we'll get, okay, I've done something wrong. I didn't put an else if here. Okay, and else if is one word. That's fine. If we do that, we'll get a fail for the first one. Okay, so now we need to actually do it for the whole column. So all we can do is we can actually, copy all of this and just change the numbers, right? So we can copy it down here and change the numbers from the row to 4, 4. You see how only the row is changing? 4, 4, 4. And now our program will actually do it for two rows. There we go, 2 fails. Okay, so that's a bit inefficient, right? Because you're gonna have to copy this across all the way down to row 55, which means you probably have around 50 of these words, which is very inefficient. And you see it's following the same pattern, only the rows have changed in these cases, correct? So in this case, we can actually use a for loop. Okay, so basically for, so firstly we need, for our loop we always need a counter, so let's dim a counter I. Now you don't know what a counter is right now, but we'll get into it. So with our for loop, the syntax is for I is equal to 0 to some number, so 50 maybe. And then we need to end the for next I. So what this basically does is, if we look at this, this will do this 50 times. Sorry, 51 times actually, because it's inclusive of both. And what it will do is, it will run this code 51 times. and every time it runs it, it will increase I by 1. Okay, so we need to actually incorporate I into here. So it will run this code 50 times, so 51 times, and every time it will increase I by 1. Okay, so that's essentially what for loop does. You can tell how many times it runs. You can say it runs 101 times. From 0 to 100, there will be 101 numbers. So in this case, it will run 101 times. This will be 50 times. So for 50 times, the last number it will run is row 53. So it will only get up to this row here. Okay? And of course, we want to get up to the last row, but right now, let's just try this. Okay? And it seems like it's worked. Easy. That's what a loop is. Loops are very useful, especially when you have a lot of rows and you need to, or a lot of things you need to do the same algorithm with. You need to compute the same way. You can just use loops. Okay, so that's a for loop, and now we want to get it up to 55. So basically, we want our last I to be 52, and that'll run up to 55. Now, of course, what you could have done is you could have started, you don't have to start from 0, you could start from 3 to 55. So you could say for I is equal to 3 to 55. And what you'll need to do is you need to actually take out the 3 plus here. Okay. Delete all that and let's try it. So here we go, run. That works perfectly. Okay, either way is fine. This is so for this for loop, it will start from I is equal to 3. It'll run these codes, then it'll change I to 4, and then run these codes again. Then it'll change I to 5, it'll run these codes again, all the way until it changes I to 55, it'll run this code once more, and then it'll finish. Okay, so that's when we actually know how many students we have. What if we want to create a template? What if we want to create a button? Let's create this macro into a button first. Let's assign this macro to it and call it calculate grade. We want to create this template for another person to use, someone who doesn't know how to write macros. Okay, so they can just click the button and then it will calculate the grade for them without them having to think. But the problem is they won't know how many students come along. Okay, it could be 55 students, it could be 100 students. So basically, if we don't know that, we can use a while loop. Okay, so in here we're not going to use for. So for basically, if you know how many cases you have, you can use a for loop. A while loop starts from somewhere, but you tell it when to end. Okay, so in our case, we'll tell it when to end. We'll tell it to end when there's no more student number. Okay, so when it reaches to this row, there's no more student number. If the cell in this row is empty, then we'll tell it to end. Okay, so after we type our while keyword, we just say active sheet dot cells I, and I stands for the row, column is 1, does not equal to empty. Okay, so what this means is while this is not equal to empty, we'll run these codes. We'll keep on going through these codes. Okay, and then when is just while the end of the while loop. Okay, so you need to have the when or the next I to signify which part of code you want to include inside our loop. Okay, so basically now that we have a while loop, we also need to specify when I starts. So you need to write I is equal to 3 because it starts from row 3. Okay, and then in here you need to count the loop. You need to say I is equal to I plus 1. What what this does is it just increments the I each time it finishes the loop. So this is a bit different to the for loop, whereas the for loop it implicitly increments the I. In the while loop you have to explicitly increment it yourself. And notice how this is different from a mathematical equation. If we wrote this as a mathematical equation, we would imply I is equal to 0. But in computing, this is a lot different from mathematical equations. This is actually called the assignment statement, which means you change the I to whatever is on the right hand side. So this will basically increase the I at the end of our loop. Okay, and it's important we write the I equals to 3 outside the loop. If we write it inside the loop, every time we increase the I and then we run it again, it will make I equals to 3. So firstly, let's try this, see if it works. Oh, whoops. Okay, so I've deleted the wrong column and everything is a fail. So what I will do is I will actually add in some random numbers. So I'll generate some random numbers again. Okay, so here's our random numbers. So I'll just set these codes. So basically, as you can see, it doesn't matter how many we have. Okay, I could delete this if I wanted to. I could take this away, put it somewhere else, and basically our loop will just stop here, right? Our loop won't actually go on to because it will count to up to here. It's empty, then it will stop the loop. Okay, that's basically what a while loop does. Okay, it's very useful when when you don't have a set number of things you have. So okay, so let's go back to this code. Let's say if we put the I in here, what do you think will happen if we put the I in here? Well, our loop will actually crash. The reason for that is every time every time we call the loop, it will initiate the increment variable back to 3, and it will never actually go to the row 4. Increment variable will increase at the end of the loop, and then once it starts again, it will start at 3 again. So it will keep on calculating this grade, and it will do it infinite times until your program crashes. So if we do that, there we go. We have a runtime error because something's wrong. Okay? Oh, okay. So the reason this is wrong is because I wasn't initialized when we before we actually calculated. So I did not equal to anything before this yellow line, and then when the while started, it tried to check whether ActiveSheet.cells I1 was empty and I was not equal to anything. So we need to actually initialize I before that as well. So in this case, our program will run infinitely and it'll crash. Okay? See how it's calculating fail? It's actually crashed. I can't click anywhere, and I had to interrupt the code by pressing escape button. Okay, so sometimes you might want that. Sometimes you might want to keep running something forever. For example, if you're playing a game, you want the game to keep running. You might want an endless while, but in most cases, you don't want an endless while. So this can happen in two ways. You could have initialized the I variable inside, which is rare. The other thing is if you forgot to increment. If you don't increment, it's always going to stay at I equals to 3. And this is the most common mistake made. But these errors are easily checked. So if I press that, it'll keep calculating that again, and it won't stop. I have to press escape to end it. Okay, if I don't end it, it might just crash my computer. Okay, so basically in this lesson you learn about whiles and for loops, okay, which are very useful when you have a lot of things you want to calculate that follows the same pattern. Okay, good.